Hi everyone. So this is the first lecture on intelligence, and in class today the questions that I asked you were really narrowing in on the intelligence war. We've talked in class in psychology about several great debates of psychology, and that nature versus nurture debate carries throughout every topic of psychology. But some might argue that people are extremely passionate about their feeling when we deal with this concept of intelligence. So here's the questions from today, and we'll start with this major question. Do we have an inborn general mental capacity? And if so, can we actually quantify this? Can we create some kind of meaningful number? Well, the definition of intelligence itself is somewhat gray. Um, Intelligence is a socially constructed concept, but in all cultures, if they are required to create some kind of definition of intelligence, all would say it's the ability to learn from experience to solve problems and use our knowledge to adapt to new situations. So cultures might have specific rules for what intelligence is. In the Amazon rainforest, intelligence may be understanding the medicinal qualities of local plants. Now, in a high school, it might be superior performance on cognitive tasks. But in each of these contexts, intelligence is this ability to learn from experience, to solve problems, and use knowledge to adapt to new situations. According to this definition, are both Einstein and Babe Ruth intelligent? Here's another problem with intelligence. When psychologists talk about intelligence, they believe it's a concept, it's not a thing. When we refer to someone's IQ as if it were some kind of fixed trait, like a real trait like height, this is a major reasoning error. We call this reification. When we think of intelligence as a trait, a thing, we're taking this abstract concept, this immaterial concept, and we're redefining it as if it were something concrete. So if a person says she has an IQ of 120, they're reifying IQ. They're imagining IQ to be this thing that a person has, rather than a score a person once obtained on a particular intelligence test. It's better to say this person scored a 120 on the intelligence test. Physicist Stephen Hawking said, when asked about his IQ, he said, "I have no idea. People who boast about their IQs are losers." So, something to think about. So here's some major controversies about intelligence. So we generally agree, most psychologists generally agree about what intelligence is now from the previous slide, but we still have two major controversies. Is intelligence the single overall ability, or is it several specific abilities? And with modern neuroscience techniques, can we locate and measure intelligence within the brain? So we think about areas of the brain doing different functions of the body and of the mind. Can we actually find where the intelligence is in the brain? So you probably know some people who are very, very talented in science, other people who are incredible with language, other people who are amazing writers. Is it possible that you can label those abilities with just one word, intelligence? Well, let's start with the theory that there really is just one marker of general intelligence. All that you can do, all of your abilities can be categorized by one marker. And this idea comes from Charles Spearman. You need to know that name. So Spearman used factor analysis to determine this general G score of general intelligence. And factor analysis, this should look familiar to you. We learned this term in the personality unit, a statistical procedure that identifies clusters of related items on a test. So he noted that those who scored high in one area, like verbal intelligence, typically scored higher than average in other areas like spatial or reasoning ability. So this tied to his belief that there was a common skill set. That skill set would be the G factor, and that underlies all of our intelligent behavior. anything, from navigating the sea to excelling in school. Well, Spearman's theory was controversial back then, and that was over 100 years ago, and it's still controversial today. So Thurstone was a critic of Spearman, and he wanted to look at how people are different. So he thought instead of a single scale of general intelligence, there were different clusters of mental abilities. So he came up with these 7 clusters. Well, what's difficult about Thurstone's work is that actually, after analyzing his data, there was a weak relationship between these. There was a persistent tendency through all of his tests that those who excelled in one of the 7 clusters generally scored well on the others. So that evidence supports Spearman's G factor. Probably the most famous critic of this G factor, this general intelligence, would be Howard Gardner. He came up with the idea of multiple intelligences. And he did this by studying savants. Remember, a savant is a condition where a person has limited mental ability, generally speaking, but has this exceptional ability in one area. When you think of a savant, you might think of the Rain Man type character, an individual, and many of us think of somebody who's autistic, who happens to be very, very gifted in one area. And Gardner came up with these different forms of intelligence. I'll put this link on my Moodle page, and this has an explanation of each of these areas of intelligence. And Gardner also speculated that there is a 9th possible intelligence. He coined the term existential intelligence, and he described this as the ability to ponder large questions about life, death, and existence. Now keep in mind where Gardner's data came from. Much of where Gardner was looking was with people who may have diminished capacity in one area, but not others. And then we have Sternberg, who also agrees with Gardner's, but now he's simplifying this into just 3 types of intelligence. Note that he added this practical intelligence, what we talked about in class, street smarts. If you want to do well in the test, take a look at this comparative chart. This is in your textbook as well. You want to know these different individuals' names and the basis, the summary behind their theory of intelligence, and you want to be able to differentiate between them. And then we have emotional intelligence. This used to be called social intelligence. And this actually came from Thorndike. Do you remember Thorndike? Thorndike was credited with the first real law in psychology, the law of effect. Remember that from the learning unit? Anyway, Thorndike said that the best mechanic in a factory may fail as a foreman for lack of social intelligence. That's a quote. And basically his idea is that you might have a very high IQ score, but if you are not emotionally intelligent, you will not be successful in life. And this is a nice chart of the components of emotional intelligence. Now, somebody didn't just make this up from perceptions or intuition. There's a lot of data behind this. Across 69 studies in many countries, those scoring high in emotional intelligence also exhibit modestly better job performance. Delayed gratification was a trait that allowed people to pursue long-range rewards, and proponents of this type of intelligence argue that if you are emotionally in tune with others, you're more often going to be successful in your career, in your marriage, in parenting situations where academically smarter but less emotionally intelligent people will fail. Now, of course, there's criticism of this idea. Gardner was a major critic, and I will end here for today. See you tomorrow.